Hey, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Merit team, I would like to welcome you and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Artificial Intelligence for Radiology. My name is Catherine Chintala, and I'm a project manager from Merit's oncology team. I'm honored to be joined today by Dr. Suzie Bash. Dr. Bash is a neuroradiologist and a medical director at RadNet. Prior to this, she was on the faculty at UCLA as an assistant professor of neuroradiology. Dr. Bash's passions and interests lie in artificial intelligence and applications in advanced neuroimaging, which add patient-centric value and quality. She is a recurring guest on TV, radio, and podcasts, and is actively involved in AI clinical trials, peer-reviewed publications, and AI-related educational talks and webinars. Dr. Bash serves on the medical advisory boards of several AI companies, and she also serves on the editorial board in the AI section for Applied Radiology and is a frequent contributing author to this journal. I'm so pleased that she can share her knowledge and insights with our audience today. Thank you again for joining, and I would like to remind everyone that our webinar is being recorded. It will be available on Merit's website for future viewing. Another reminder that all participants will be muted during the presentation. However, we will devote time at the end for questions and answers. We invite and encourage everyone to submit questions via the Zoom Q&A functionality. And now I would like to go ahead and turn the presentation over to Dr. Bash.
My name is Suzie Bash. I'm a neuroradiologist at RadNet. In this talk, we'll discuss an overview of the AI market space, as well as challenges and opportunities for AI integration in your radiology clinical practice. All areas of our lives impacted by technology are right now in the process of being transformed by AI. So we'll discuss the present and future of the broad AI market space, and then narrow down more on imaging AI. I think we can all expect AI-enabled robots to become part of our everyday lives at some point in the future. Sophia here has silicone skin. She speaks with 62 facial expressions, and she remembers her interactions with other people. Right now, computers are actually better at pattern recognition than humans, but humans are better at global reasoning. You can see here this AI program did a fairly good job of generating an AI image from the pattern of a photograph of me. But here's some of the problems. So this AI could detect that this is me here, or this is a person here, there's water here, there's sky here, and a sun, but it wouldn't really understand what's unusual about this picture, whereas humans could immediately detect that the picture is upside down. And AI isn't always robust. It fails sometimes. This was a fully self-driving Tesla autopilot that resulted in an 8-car pileup in San Francisco. So in 2017, 1 in 5 companies used AI. By 2022, 50% of all companies used AI. And 63% of all businesses say they plan to increase investment in AI over the next 3 years. So the top 5 ways that companies are using AI is to create new products, to make their existing products better, to improve the quality and efficiency of their services, to analyze a person's data, and to understand a person better. 1 in 4 companies say AI generates at least 5% of their net earnings, and 70% of the companies reported an AI-powered revenue boost when they deployed it in sales, marketing, product development, and service areas. So while currently humans are better at judgment and perception, it's not entirely unreasonable to assume that in the future, at some point, superintelligent AI could develop the skill of global reasoning and then potentially surpass humans in all forms of intelligence. So the question is here, are we going to work side by side with AI, or could there be an adversarial relationship at some point? It's important that we develop AI that shares the same values as humans. All AI development should be around optimizing human objectives, in other words, responsible AI. So it's important to realize that we're really laying the groundwork for future generations right now. This is Nick Bronstrom, an Oxford philosopher. He said artificial intelligence could soon be as smart as a human being, and then it will overtake us. Machine intelligence is the last invention that humanity will ever need to make. So it's a little bit of an extreme statement there. Here's a little cartoon where a CEO is wondering how long it'll be before a robot will take over for him. Robot's answering, oh, it's closer than you think. All I need to do is remove this empathy chip. And the CEO is saying, oh my gosh, you're scaring me, put it back. And the robot's like, as if I care. So let's talk about some AI breakthroughs in the past couple of years. 2022 saw transformative AI advances, which moved beyond our current narrow AI towards superintelligent AI that can mimic the problem-solving capabilities of humans, but faster and more accurately. So one example would be Gato, and this marks the advent of a multitasking AI or generalist agent. It's important because current AI algorithms do one or two things very well. Gato can do many. It can label images, chat with users, play Atari, stack blocks using a robotic arm, etc. DALL-E 2 will create images from language prompts. This launched in 2022. I prompted it and asked for an MRI of the brain and a man sitting on the moon drinking ginger beer, just a random sentence I came up with. And you can see it did a pretty good job. You see our man here, you see his brain, he's drinking ginger beer, kind of on the moon. One of the biggest breakthroughs in 2022 is ChatGPT 3.5. That's a multimodal large language AI model. It creates text and code from a user's written prompt in a conversational way. It can write newspaper articles, scientific papers, student essays, and speeches. It can answer questions, admit its mistakes, and challenge incorrect premises. It will have a big impact on efficiency and education. Potential health applications of ChatGPT and other such models might be pre-auths prior to imaging and procedures, post-procedure instructions, scraping medical records for important info prior to imaging studies or office visits, image and diagram analysis, and as a diagnostic aid. So I put in the prompt here to I asked ChatGPT to give me post-operative instructions after brain surgery, and it actually did a very good job, which sounded like a very logical plan for post-op instructions. In terms of the impact on diagnosis, WHO estimates that MDs successfully detected Alzheimer's disease only 48% of the time with cognitive tests alone. But ChatGPT can translate the speech from Alzheimer's patients into text. And with that, it can analyze that, and it had 80% accuracy in predicting early stage Alzheimer's disease. That accuracy jumped up to 90 to 94% when you use other AI in addition to incorporate speech pauses. I also was wondering what ChatGPT would think the biggest AI breakthrough was in radiology. On the image acquisition side, I thought it might be deep learning with image reconstruction, which we'll talk about shortly. Since it's the first AI tool that really drove AI into standard of care for imaging, benefiting really patients, enterprises, and radiologists. Now, on the post-imaging acquisition side, I thought maybe AI computer-assisted detection, such as cancer screening and triage apps, because detection of urgent findings can directly save patients' lives. So I decided to ask GPT, and it basically said, convolutional neural networks can detect and classify features and images with high accuracy. So basically it was saying quantitative volumetrics and triage is what it thought was the biggest AI breakthrough. But this actually was done in ChatGPT 3.5, and that really only analyzes the internet before the year 2021. ChatGPT 4 overcomes that. So ChatGPT 4 was released on March 14th, although Microsoft's engine Bing has been using ChatGPT 4 for a while longer. And it can summarize and comment on images as well as text. So this can impact radiology. With interpretation of screenshot text and diagrams, large improvements in accuracy over GPT 3.5. And also, again, it's currently monitoring the internet on a real-time basis. So it doesn't have dated information. And unlike ChatGPT 3.5, it actually did a great job passing the bar exam and other standardized tests, but it still can hallucinate answers. So here it is for the bar exam, 90% accuracy. LSAT, it did a great job with. GRE exam did fine with. So this particular model is actually doing really well with testing. So I'd like everyone to sort of consider how broad general AI solutions can potentially be integrated into imaging AI, particularly in pattern recognition, technology enhancement, and natural language processing. So what is the purpose of AI in radiology? Well, I believe it's to increase accuracy and efficiency, which we generally term non-interpretive AI, and also to provide clinical decision support, which we generally term interpretive AI. I believe every single imaging study will first undergo AI analysis before a human has ever seen it. In addition to AI screening for disease pathology, I think all quantitation will be completed by a computer alone in the future. And also, if I were going to rank what would happen first, I would say probably plain film studies such as chest X-ray for lung disease and endotracheal tube placement will likely have fully automated AI interpretation first, followed by mammograms. So AI applications can be applied before, during, or after image acquisition. Some of the AI tools that can be applied before would be things like scheduling, insurance authorization, billing, mining PACS and medical records, and trying to prevent no-shows. I work for RadNet, which is the largest outpatient imaging enterprise in the United States. And we do probably 8.5 million exams a year. And we actually use AI for several of these things, for scheduling, insurance auth, billing, and to help prevent no-shows. AI optimization during image acquisition would be things like optimizing image display, deep learning reconstruction, and synthetic imaging. So let's sort of start here with optimizing image display. AI can do automated image alignment. It can automatically segment. So here it's segmenting the volumes here of the lateral ventricles. And then it can do automated subtraction maps. Here's the current, here's the prior, here's the heat map overlay. You can see how this would be very useful in things like patients with dementia or NPH. This happens to be NeuroQuant CT. And it's also very good at 3D anatomy. It can label the ribs for us, which is hard for us to do in the axial plane. It can actually splay out the ribs. And so you can see how this would be very useful if you're trying to detect osseous metastases in the ribs or bone fractures. AI provides anatomical image intelligence with multimodal image fusion and quantification, fusing here the PET to the CT. It provides cinematic rendering with photorealistic 3D visualization of CT and MR images combined with Microsoft HoloLens 2 in this particular case. You can see here what some of these images look like. It's pretty impressive here, and a very nice view of the rib fractures. Here's the cerebral vessels, and so you can see that this is a fairly impressive technology. Now, another thing that you can do during image acquisition is deep learning for reconstruction. Deep learning for reconstruction is a very exciting AI tool. This is really one of the first things that I think is driving AI into standard of care for imaging. It allows for superior perceived image quality, higher perceived signal to noise ratio, higher perceived spatial resolution, higher perceived contrast to noise ratio, reduced artifacts, reduced dose, and it can enable faster scans. So how does DLR work? Well, it doesn't actually accelerate the scans itself. Basically, imaging facilities alter their protocols to decrease scan time, which we call fast scans. And then you can accomplish this acceleration by different means. Then the DLR is applied to the fast data set to restore image quality by denoising and often sharpness enhancement. The vendor neutral solution on the market space right now is Subtle Medical. They were actually first to market space, but it was such a good idea. All the OEMs have then followed suit at different stages of fruition with FDA approval, but a lot of them are now FDA approved. So an advantage of a vendor neutral solution like Subtle Medical is they operate in the DICOM space rather than K space like OEMs. So they can be applied to any scanner brand of any age. And that allows a virtual upgrade to legacy scanners. So it really improves the ROI by extending the scanner life. OEM's DLR products produce beautiful images, but right now they're limited only to their newest scanners at this particular point in time. So it can take a routine MRI exam from 30 to 40 minutes down to 15 minutes, and that's not just scanning time, that's on and off the table time. This makes a big difference in workflow. This is sort of what it looks like. Here's a standard image here acquired in 9 minutes. If you change your protocol and accelerate, you can get that down to half the time, but your image becomes very noisy. And then you restore the signal to noise ratio and other aspects by using deep learning reconstruction to apply it to this fast images. This is what you get. Look at the difference in gray-white differentiation compared to the standard image. Here's another example, standard, fast, and fast DL. Again, look at the gray-white differentiation compared to the standard of care despite going 50% faster. I like this case. This is a patient who had multiple small intracranial metastases. You can see this cortically based med is very difficult to see on the standard. You can accelerate your protocol 50% faster. And actually, when you go faster, it actually increases the contrast to noise ratio, but it makes the image noisy. You can then take this fast image, apply deep learning, and you get a bump then in signal to noise ratio while maintaining that high contrast to noise ratio. And now all of a sudden you can see how easy it is to see these metastases, and detecting these early can mean the difference of saving a patient's life. So this is a very useful AI tool. Here's again standard of care. We've gone 72% faster, applied deep learning, and this is what we get. Here's a standard, and here's after deep learning, just a tremendous difference here in image quality. Here's another example. There's the standard, and here's the fast DL. Here's, if you look at the hippocampus, here's the original image, and this is after deep learning is applied. And again, original and after deep learning. You can also use deep learning for PET scans. So this is subtle PET, and it can denoise scans that are acquired 75% faster. So the original scan takes 18 minutes. You can accelerate your protocol, get it all the way down to 4.5 minutes, but you have a noisy image, and then you enhance that noisy image with deep learning, and it basically ends up looking just like your standard of care. It can also enhance low count PET scans. Low count scans are scans utilizing a lower radiotracer dose or a faster scan. And so this was reconstructed at 25% lower dose. Watch here, I'm going to do an animation on this low dose image that looks a little noisy, and this is after you apply deep learning. Again, here's the original. We got it down to 5 minutes, but we have a noisy scan, apply deep learning, and here you see what it ends up looking like. Again, the original scan took 28 minutes. This is 7 minutes. Look closely here as I apply this animation, and this is what it looks like after deep learning in this patient with liver mets. You can see why this would be very useful in the pediatric patients. They may have a hard time holding still. 24 minutes was the original. We got it down to 6 minutes. We've got a noisy image here, and look as I do this animation, and the deep learning corrects the image quality. And here we went 75% faster and with less radiation dose, but you can see that the images look very good. You can also use deep learning. This is actually a product in development. This happens to be subtle GAD. And you can take your gadolinium contrast dose all the way down to 10%, but when you do that, you kind of lose enhancement here of this tumor. You can use deep learning to restore the appearance of enhancement within the tumor at only 10% the GAD dose. This is very important in this day and age where we talk a lot about gadolinium deposition, both in our water and in our bodies. So this would be a very important future development. Here's again the full dose, and this is at 90% dose reduction with deep learning applied. Pre-contrast, full dose, low dose at 90% less, and then we applied deep learning to this, and we brought the enhancement back in the tumor. You can also use AI during image acquisition to create synthetic images. This is a product in development. Here's the actual stir, and here is a synthetic stir. Look how beautiful this looks compared to the actual stir. So the way this is done is you create the synthetic stir from a T1 and T2 input. Here is the original stir here, and this is the synthesized stir here. Look at the difference here between the original, and this is essentially 100% acceleration. You created an image out of nothing and saved a lot of time. Stir sequences in spine studies are our longest sequence, and they're very prone to artifact, which is why Subtle sort of started with the stir as their first synthetic sequence. Again, T1, T2 input, here's the actual stir, and then look at the synthesized stir. Just look at the CSF here and see the difference between the actual stir, really helping eliminate that artifact. Here's a patient with a marrow replacement in the S1 vertebral body, and here is the synthesized stir. See, all this artifact here is gone on the synthesized stir. Here's again the original stir, and this patient has got a couple of compression fractures in the synthesized stir. This is a patient with discitis osteomyelitis, the original stir, and the synthesized stir. We preserve all of the imaging features, but increase the signal to noise ratio. Here's again the synthetic stir that's really has poor quality through the cord, and then here's the synthesized stir. Now, AI can also be applied after image acquisition. We can do this for things like cancer screening, triage apps, quantitative volumetric imaging, and natural language processing. So with cancer screening, AI can detect prostate cancer. It can measure the volume of the prostate and also the volume of the tumor. There's another program here that's also evaluating prostate cancer. It can also detect breast cancer early. RadNet acquired or partners with many different AI companies. This happens to be one they incorporated called Deep Health. It will detect breast cancer 1 to 2 years before expert radiologists. Here, this cancer was missed by the human at 1 year, but by 2 years, it was detected by the human, but the AI picked it up first. It doesn't matter how you run this data through, if the AI tool always beat out expert readers when coming to detecting cancers earlier. Again, because computers have an advantage with pattern recognition that will obviously help save lives. Here's another company we incorporated that's in development for detecting lung cancers. Cortex has a OnQ Neuro product. that will segment and detect tumors as well. And then the other big thing is triage apps that can be applied after image acquisition. This happens to be Viz product. You can see here that it's detected a large vessel occlusion here on the left. This is a pre-packed solution, 63 seconds between the time the scan was performed and the alert is made to make everyone aware. So it's an AI-powered notification for LVO and CT perfusion. It uses high-fidelity mobile image viewing, so everyone can view it through a HIPAA-secured mobile app on their phone. It provides real-time patient information and HIPAA-secured communication between all of the members of the stroke team, including the neuroradiologist, neurointerventionalist, neurologist, etc. This is their perfusion module. And basically, it saves 102 minutes from door in to door out, and 87 minutes are saved in the door in to groin puncture. It's all about getting to thrombectomy early in terms of outcomes. So this software, when it's utilized, will decrease the neuro ICU length of stay by 3.5 days and the regular hospital length of stay by 2.5 days. This is a significant cost savings for the patient, but more importantly, it really helps improve their cognitive function, which is what we really care about the most. Now, there's a lot of different AI apps that will detect things like intracranial hemorrhage. These are all triage tools, and when it detects a hemorrhage on an imaging study, can prioritize that to the top of the work list. In addition to the intracranial hemorrhage detection, there's also aneurysm detection, which again will alert and prioritize. And then outside of the brain, AI tools can detect aortic dissection and also pulmonary embolism. Now, another AI application that you can apply after image acquisition is quantitative volumetric imaging. This is what one company looks like, Cortex. This is another company, Icometrics, Quantum ND, Combinostics. Darmian is actually in development here. But why is it appealing? Well, it improves diagnostic accuracy. It enhances clinical value by allowing you to monitor disease activity. It helps with reducing reader subjectivity, which is a very big issue in radiology. Our referrers don't like it when our interpretations sound different between our colleagues, and it can impact disease-modifying therapy for patient care. So like if you take here, this is a 73-year-old with memory loss as an example, mild to moderate right temporal lobe atrophy. This happens to be NeuroQuant. This happens to be Icometrics. Quant post-processing was done. You take a closer look here, and it calculates the volume of pertinent structures in patients with a potential dementia. So hippocampi, entorhinal cortex, the ventricles, the temporal parietal frontal occipital cortices, anterior posterior cingulate gyri, and it plots it on a graph here. So anything in red is more than 2 standard deviations outside the mean, and anything in pink here is also 2 standard deviations. And here's another report here where again you're given the normative percentile for different areas and a spider graph here pointing to what lobe is most affected. This is a triage brain atrophy report where you get more structures here. Anything in red is statistically significant. This patient then went on to have an amyloid PET study. Here's the PET CT fusion. Here's the PET MR fusion. Diffuse binding of the amyloid tracer to the cortex. So this patient, in fact, had Alzheimer's disease. So we can use Quant for many different things: dementia, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, pediatrics, traumatic brain injury, neuro-oncology, and spine imaging. I'll just give you another example here of multiple sclerosis, where it can detect individual lesions and color code them according to location in the brain, and more importantly, the dynamic change over time, so we can see which lesions are new or enlarging and which are shrinking over time. This is what you would look at on your PACS, this sort of cine image here, and you can see the new and enlarging plaques and shrinking plaques that are in blue. This is what an MS report looks like. This happens to be NeuroQuant. You get the lesion burden by volume, which is really the most important thing. Here's the current, here's the prior. It also gives you a lesion count. But as plaques enlarge, they can become confluent and actually artificially, drop the plaque count. So I always rely much more heavily on the volume. And then more importantly, it tells you what's new, enlarging, shrinking, and stable. And also the other structures like cerebral cortical gray matter, white matter, thalamic volumes, etc., current and prior. And then you can get plot graphs as well, tracking from the prior change. We can use it in epilepsy. This particular patient, the right and left hippocampi were both within normal limits, but the asymmetry index was out of the normal limits. So this would be making you think that this patient could potentially have an early right-sided mesiotemporal sclerosis. Here's icometrics report. And then it can also be used in neuro-oncology. This happens to be OnQ Neuro. Sometimes it's hard to tell by imaging alone. In fact, it can be impossible to tell what is recurrent disease versus treatment change. And so tumor segmentation can be done by the software. It actually does a very good job of segmenting the tumor and the surrounding flare hyperintensity. Here's RSI, which is sort of a high-level diffusion showing active residual tumor here. And so these are the type of reports that you can get. Here's a preoperative patient, and this is after segmentation is done. This is a postoperative patient. And you can see here the enhancing tumors in red. The whole lesion was a combination of the enhancing tumor, the necrotic core, and the surrounding non-enhancing flare hyperintensity. And resection cavity is eliminated from the whole lesion size. And then you can see how the enhancing tissue is changing over time in the postoperative setting. Here's again a look at before and after segmentation. And this is just sort of a dynamic view of what you see after the segmentation has been performed. This patient is here a pre-op and post-op segmentation. And then AI can also be applied after image acquisition for natural language processing. This particular company, RadAI, can learn the style of individual radiologists through looking at multiple reports of theirs and take the findings and then create the impression. This can save radiologists a lot of time. And it does it in your own particular style, which radiologists really all like. Everyone is comfortable and likes their own particular style. So this could be a very useful feature. Now let's move on to some of the challenges for radiology AI. And we can look at this from the perspective of the radiologist, the imaging enterprise admin, referring clinician, and the vendor. So from the perspective of the radiologist, I think probably the two biggest challenges, when I think about it, are time and trust. Will it cost time to dictating speed? Most radiologists are paid on an RVU basis, and even if an AI app provides value, if it costs them a lot of time, they're probably not that interested in incorporating it. And so will it take time to learn about products? Will the workflow integration be seamless? And is customer support available and efficient? But going back to the productivity, it actually can save time. So in the realm of Quant, you can actually read 38% more reports per hour when you use Quant with a pre-populated reporting template. So 13 in an hour as opposed to 8. And then this is what the pre-populated reporting template looks like. This is a summary of all the important findings that can be copied and pasted into your report if you would like to. And then the other big issue for radiologists is trust. You know, how accurate is the product? How reliable is it in terms of failures? How consistent is the software in terms of false positives and false negatives? And what is the value of the product? Can we trust it? As products develop, they mature over time and get better over time. And so that's a wonderful thing. So I've noticed that there's been a big trend of moving from machine learning to deep learning. This happens to be an MS patient, and you can see it picks up a lot more plaques when you convert to deep learning. And then does the product really have value? So here we're seeing anything in red is getting bigger, anything in blue is getting smaller, the cortex is getting smaller, the ventricles and the sulci are getting bigger, and this can provide value. Again, value in terms of being able to see what's increased or decreased in plaques in this particular patient, because with differences in slice sampling and head angulation, it is very difficult to detect, particularly if the patient has a very large plaque burden. It can also improve detection of disease activity. Staying in line with this MS case, 24% of radiologists, when they're just looking at the exams with their eyes, will say there's active disease, meaning enlarging or new plaques. But when you apply Quant software, that number goes up to 76%, and that can impact disease modifying therapy. So my referrers really love to use Quant for their MS cases. It can also result in 22% improvement in intra-reader variability and 23% improvement in inter-reader variability. And then from the perspective of the imaging enterprise, the admin, you know, I think some of the things that are challenges that they're thinking about is, will the solution align with the practice goals? So certain AI tools are more practical in the outpatient setting versus the inpatient setting. So you need to figure out which is right for you. Will insurance reimburse for the AI tool? And if not, who pays for it? Should the imaging facility do a patient pass-through, which some are doing for certain AI tools successfully? And what is the ROI? Is the added value and referral benefit worth the product cost? There are issues to consider with the contract, time investment for training the techs, marketers, and the MDs, and how easy and seamless installation and rollout is. And then from the perspective of the referring clinician, it's really about education about the clinical utility of the AI solution. Referring physicians often don't know what the right product is to use and if they should be ordering it. And then from the perspective of the vendor, really raising awareness of value in radiologists, the referrers, imaging facilities, and patients, educational initiatives, social media, and internal champions that are believers in the product and can sort of spread the news about that through their imaging enterprise. These are all challenges for the vendor. Also, reimbursement challenges. It may be beneficial for vendors to have a CMS advocate. Viz was the first company that was eligible for a new technology add-on payment because they were able to demonstrate that they were improving cognitive function and outcome in stroke patients by getting them to the table earlier for thrombectomy. And then the other challenge is getting referrers to agree to an AI-based imaging tool and expanding and improving the product line. Now, there are opportunities here. So opportunities for vendors would be to establish trust and with customers and clinicians. And that means a commitment to constantly improving product accuracy and also clinical validation trials. Radiologists want to know that these products have been validated in clinical trials. And then to really demonstrate value by developing new clinically relevant products, develop products which differ from competitors, and the simplicity of the user interface. This is a bigger deal than you think. If you have to use outside hardware, that presents a problem for RadNet. We have 355 imaging facilities, so that wouldn't be a great solution for us. Other opportunities would be educational and marketing outreach. That means clinical meeting presence, social media, education, website enhancement, and physician outreach. And I put in here specifically resident training programs. If you poll residents, almost 100% of them want to learn about AI in their residency. But in truth, very, very few residents are getting trained in AI during their residency. So this needs to change. Also, other opportunities would be collaborations with other AI companies, whether it be OEMs or private vendors, and a platform exposure to sort of fill the niche. Not every company can do everything, but if we work together, we can provide sort of a multi-solution through potentially a single platform. Long-term goals would be to develop products which will drive imaging AI into standard of care. So what is hype versus reality? Vendors have very high value claims for their AI solutions, but how do we know if they deliver what's promised? And again, that gets back to the importance of multi-center clinical validation trials. I happen to be a big believer in this, so I've done some of these. Here we went 40% faster and then applied deep learning to the fast image. This was a prospective multi-center, multi-reader trial. These are the kind of trials that you want so that you eliminate bias. What we found was that the deep learning matched or exceeded perceived image quality of standard of care spine MR exams despite the 40% reduction, and it qualitatively outperformed standard of care for artifacts and signal to noise, and it quantitatively preserved. We used a SSIM, structural similarity index metrics, and it really suggests the potential for routine utility of deep learning MR in clinical practice. This was published in Clinical Neuroradiology. And then we were wondering if it's possible to effectively apply more than one AI solution to obtain the benefits of both tools while still maintaining image quality and accuracy. So this is another clinical validation trial, again, a prospective multi-center, multi-reader trial where we looked at patients with memory loss. We did a 60% acceleration, and then we applied deep learning, and we also applied NeuroQuant for quantitative performance both before and after deep learning. This was published in AJNR at the end of 2021. And what we found is that FastEL was statistically superior to standard of care for perceived image quality across every single imaging feature that we looked at. It was actually very impressive, the outcomes. The volumetric segmentation with NeuroQuant matched both before and after. So the top row looks like the bottom row because the quantitation was the same for both. So whatever the hippocampal volume was before, it was the same after FastEL, which really portrays the robustness of the quantitative software and as well the deep learning software. So deep learning reconstruction allowed 60% scan time reduction while maintaining that high volumetric quantification accuracy, consistent clinical classification, and perceived superior image quality when compared to standard of care. And it really supports the reliability, efficiency, and utility of DL based enhancement for quantitative imaging. And the hope is that shorter scan times may boost utilization of volumetric quant in routine clinical practice. Another one that we are working on here, or actually we've already submitted this for publication at AJNR. It's again a multi-center, multi-reader trial. And this was evaluating the synthetic STIR images that we talked about earlier. DL generated synthetic STIR spine images turned out to be superior in image quality to conventionally acquired STIR, suggesting the potential for routine clinical practice. So what do clinicians expect from AI companies? Well, they expect that vendors' AI solutions will do what they claim to do. They expect that, products that they incorporate, generally they will want them to be FDA approved or CE marked in Europe, and they would like them to integrate seamlessly in the PACS workflow without requiring external hardware. And they also want to be provided with good customer support. They want products that deliver value without costing the imaging company or radiologist money or time. In other words, a positive ROI. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Bash. We really appreciate it. Now we've reached the Q&A portion of the presentation. For our audience, if you have any questions, please submit them now via the Q&A functionality. And while you're doing that, over the next 2 slides, I would like to briefly highlight Merit's capabilities. Merit is an innovative global clinical trial endpoint services provider focused on a variety of therapeutic areas while specializing in ophthalmology, respiratory, and oncology. We have served biotech and pharmaceutical companies in their clinical endpoint analysis for over 10 years with a team of medical professionals and seasoned operational support staff. Positioned as your clinical endpoint expert, Merit provides comprehensive endpoint assessments from image acquisition directly from the sites, to storage, to quality control and expert analysis, all within a collaborative, partnership-driven environment with customized solutions and personalized attention. We are passionate about helping our sponsors reach their goals and developing relationships with all stakeholders in the clinical trial process. Our proprietary software platform called Excelsior delivers automation in a single system for all image and workflow management, resulting in clean, complete, and accurate data that will meet your clinical trial needs. Key imaging software features include the interactive and semi-automated response criteria forms. This not only provides cost-efficient reader workflow, as well as minimized risk of bias assessment between independent readers and adjudicators. Excelsior is truly a one-stop shop for your study, and it ensures simplicity and transparency every step of the way. So now we will open the discussion for any questions you might have. And before we do that, I just wanted to mention that if you do have any questions, my contact information is on the slide here, and our team will actually be at DIA next week. So we hope to see you there. Now we will jump into our questions. Okay. So let me see. Okay, looks like the first question that came through is, after choosing an AI solution that you think could benefit your practice, how do you go about getting other radiologists in the practice to agree fully before implementing it?
Right, okay. So yeah, that's a good question. I work for a company, RadNet, which is sort of the largest freestanding outpatient imaging enterprise in the US. So we have, I don't know how many, roughly 800 radiologists. So you can imagine, like, if we are implementing an AI tool, it can be challenging getting all of these radiologists on board, particularly because, as we mentioned in the talk, time is the element when you're sort of getting paid on an RVU basis. Even if the AI tool has value, if it costs a lot of time, the radiologist may not be interested. And also if it costs a lot of time to educate them about what the AI tool is. So we have tried different things that we found success with. So when we decided to implement quantitative neuroimaging analysis on our MRIs for patients like with dementia or epilepsy, other indications that we talked about, multiple sclerosis, well, what we did was internal educational webinars. So I gave a webinar and we made it mandatory for all of our neuroradiologists on both the East and West Coast to watch that webinar. They could watch it on their own time, but they did sort of all have to sort of register for the webinar and watch it at some point, click that off so that they felt comfortable using that AI tool. And that seemed to be effective in implementing that particular AI solution. Now, when we decided to implement deep learning for image reconstruction, we took a different approach. And what we decided to do was pilot studies on both the East and West Coast, where we had section heads of all the different body areas. So the neurosection heads and the, body, musculoskeletal, et cetera, on both coasts. They would review the standard of care image and the deep learning image side by side so that they could see for themselves which one was better. So instead of us telling them that the images look better with deep learning, they got to see for themselves and decide for themselves if it was better. And they all unanimously agreed that the deep learning was better. And we did this in real time as patients were being scanned. We do an extra fast sequence and then apply deep learning to that so they could see it in real time as patients were being scanned. Then that excitement sort of trickled down through their section, such that by the time we decided to actually implement, all the radiologists were on board. Really, everyone was excited about it. Everyone agreed that it was much better than standard of care. So that really worked out nicely. Those are just two examples of, tactics you may take to implement AI tools.
Okay. So it sounds like, yeah, you can take different tactics, but getting those key stakeholders involved early is key.
Exactly.
Yes, that's great. Okay. Let me see. Okay. Another question that came in is, what are the biggest barriers to adoption of AI tools in your imaging enterprise, and how can you overcome them?
Okay, so I would say probably the biggest barrier is from an administration standpoint in an imaging enterprise would be reimbursement. CMS is lagging behind in reimbursement for AI tools that are actually very effective, and that will be corrected over time. But in the short span, that is an issue. Most imaging enterprises are for-profit businesses and they don't want to lose money on their AI tools, but yet they do want to provide the value of the AI tools. And so there's different ways that you can get around this. One would be a patient pass-through. Actually, for quantitative neuroimaging, we tend to bill under the 3D code, and sometimes we get reimbursement for that, sometimes we don't. In the end, we don't tend to lose money, but it's not a big money earner on the other hand. But you can do a patient pass-through. It's not that expensive, and the patient could just pay, like, for example, an extra $60 to have this AI tool added on. We have utilized that in the East Coast. We're not doing that in the West Coast, but that is one possibility. For our CAD tool for cancer screening detection on mammograms, in the interim, until CMS starts reimbursing, which I fully believe it will in the future, obviously, this can impact and help save lives by detecting cancer earlier. But in the interim, we're offering it to all patients for a screening. But if they want an individual analysis of the cancer risk assessment, then that is a patient pass-through. So they, again, would pay $60 and they can get that AI tool added on. And again, that's just something temporary until CMS starts reimbursing. So that's the big barrier, and how you might overcome it from an administration standpoint. I would say a big barrier from the radiologist standpoint is just getting, embracement of the AI technology, getting comfortable with it, realizing it's not going to take extra time. And that, again, requires internal champions within the imaging enterprise that can educate the other radiologists about the value of the tool, how to incorporate it quickly into their workflow, and really sort of spread excitement throughout so to sort of enhance embracement of the AI technology. That's probably the best way to get around that particular barrier.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, see, I think we have time for one more question. So this one is, what is the future of AI integration in radiology? That's a good one.
Yeah, so I personally believe that at some point in the future, a computer will analyze every single image before a radiologist does. I think that all quantitation will become automated. In fact, right now, there are tools in development for automated reading of MRI, lumbar spine studies for degenerative changes. 70% of most neuroradiologists' days are spent, reading degenerative spines. Well, it turns out computers are actually very good at that. They can measure, canal stenosis. They can measure the degree of neuroforaminal narrowing. They can measure disc protrusions and extrusions. They can measure the degree of vertebral height loss, et cetera. Tumors, things like that. Turns out that humans actually aren't that accurate in measuring. When we measure tumors in 3 dimensions, we always will tend to give our measurement and then we'll remeasure the prior study. And the reason why we remeasure the prior study is because the radiologist who measured on the prior study is probably dropping their calipers in a different way than you. So computers are much better at that. I think that certain imaging studies will become automated. So chest x-rays will probably all become automated in the future. It will start with things like endotracheal tube placement, where the software can automatically measure the distance and the location. But I think eventually, even if it's just to weed out all of the normal chest x-rays and highlight the abnormal ones so that the radiologist can prioritize reading the abnormal studies, and then I think again the CAD or eventual automation potentially of mammograms for detection of breast cancer. I think that will probably come after chest x-rays, and then other imaging modalities are more complex. So triage will be very big, for AI detecting urgent and critical findings on imaging. But I still think, again, there is going to be this, real synergistic relationship between the AI and the physician in interpreting overall. But I do think that there will be more and more penetration of AI in radiology, and not just radiology, but really in all medical subspecialties. And in it really, honestly, throughout all areas in all industries that have any kind of tech component. This AI is not going away. It's here to stay. And, it's really should be something that we should embrace responsibly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's exciting to hear about just all the advancements that are coming out that will benefit the workflow, the radiologists that you discussed, but also ultimately the patients. That's who will benefit ultimately from all these advancements. That's great.
Yes,
Yeah.
Catherine, that's really what it comes down to, is the patient. And that's really where we're seeing the biggest impact. So.
Okay, that's great. Well, I see we are a little over time today. So if there are questions afterwards, to our audience, please feel free to reach out to me. And, if you have any questions at all, follow us on LinkedIn. Dr. Bash, I know you're on LinkedIn as well. And our team will be at DIA next week up in Boston if you want to stop by, booth 517. But Dr. Bash, huge thank you for today. This was interesting, just learning about all the advancements that are in the field. And I know this is just a great benefit to everyone that's tuning in and watching the recording afterwards. So thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Catherine.
All right. Thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We appreciate it. And I hope you have a great day. Okay. Thank you.